Hello out there. Welcome to the Girl Wise Conference. While I am so bummed out that I won't get the opportunity to meet you all in person, I'm thankful and excited to share with you all virtually. So welcome. I'm Carly Butler. I'm a mom, a big sister, a bestie, a foodie, a lover of fashion, and a survivor of many traumas. Some you can see and some you can't. Today, I'll be sharing with you how to get your life back after trauma, or more simply, how to get back on track after something terrible happens to you. When you leave today, I'm hoping you'll have some tools to build your resiliency and that you'll learn to be proud of your journey no matter what happens along the way. I want to start by sharing a fun fact, though. It may not have any meaning to you right now, but I'm hoping that you'll tuck it away in your back pocket or in the back of your mind and you'll pull it out when you need it. Ready? Did you know that there are approximately 7.8 billion people on this earth? Yes, 7.8 billion. But there is only one you. That means you're something special. And I'm not just saying that because I like you. I'm saying because it's a fact. Just like two snowflakes are not the same, you're just as unique. And so is your personal journey. And at some point, you will inevitably compare it to other people's. That's just what we do. So we look at what Beth is doing and wonder, should we be doing the same things? Or we'll see what Cool Cats posted on Instagram and say, oh man, I wish I had that too. But your story is your own and your journey is your own. And you should be proud of it. So let me jump right in and tell you about some bumps that threw me off track on my life journey. Some things that would make it really difficult for me to come back. And honestly, I'd never imagined that I'd be able to share my story with pride and not be ashamed. So I'm really proud of how far I've come. But when I was 22 years old, I lost my mother to suicide. And that tragedy was very hard for me to come back from. It was so sudden and just so tremendous that it would influence some of the decisions that I'd make following. So that happened at 22. And it was really hard to grow up so fast. I suddenly had to make lots of grown-up decisions, even though I just graduated from college, just started working full-time. It felt like an overwhelming burden. At 23 years old, I would be assaulted and kidnapped. On March 15, 2006, I was living in the South Loop, and I was, leaving to go to work one morning. And as I walked down to my parking garage, I noticed that there were a group of guys parked near my car. Those guys would get out of their car and would physically attack me. They would stuff me into the trunk of my car. And fortunately, I was able to jump out. Now, I never imagined that my life would become a news story, but it did. And this was all the result of someone I was dating at the time. He was involved in some illegal street activity that he did not tell me about. And the people who were out to get him came and got me. Shortly thereafter, on May 25th, 2006, I was leaving my cousin's house one night. And as I was walking to my car, two women approached me. One of them had a gun. And so she held the gun up to my face and she assaulted me with acid. That's where these scars come from. That was one of the worst things that ever happened to me. I'd end up with 3rd-degree full-thickness burns to 30% of my body, and I'd have to spend 6.5 weeks in the hospital. My world was turned upside down. I didn't know who to trust. I didn't know who I was going to be. There were just so many things that had me wondering, what my purpose was and how I was going to go on any further. And, being physically assaulted and having physical trauma is one thing, but having emotional trauma is another. And those are some I still heal today from those scars. But I want to tell you, I want to share with you 10 tips that I hope will help you when you're in a tight space, or when things are changing for you, or something bad happens and you need to get through it. All right, so write these down. The first thing is, I suggest you grieve. For me, I was grieving the loss of my identity. Give yourself time to grieve the loss. Feel it all. You know, it's natural to want to numb and not feel it, but then it's harder for us to really grow through our experience. I want you to feel the anger, the sadness, and the rage. It's a really important part of the healing process. So for me, grieving the loss of what I was an indispensable part of discovering who I'd become. Tip number 2, rely on your support system. That's assuming that you have one. And if you don't, try your best to create one. I relied heavily on my support system, even when I had too much pride to ask for help. That includes asking for professional help. I needed to seek mental health services. But in your case, I'd suggest turning to a safe adult or friend you can trust, who you know has your best interest at heart and who genuinely wants to help you. Tip number 3, be grateful. I practiced gratitude. You all familiar with that? It's counting your blessings, or really thinking about all of the things that you do have instead of focusing on what you don't have. And when I started to do that, my life improved dramatically. I would often watch the news and see stories about people who didn't make it back home, or I'd read stories about acid burn survivors who were blinded, or were so injured that they lost body parts, ears and noses, and that was a reminder for me to be grateful. Tip number 4, make your experience a pivotal moment. I decided to make my survival a pivotal moment. You can make your experience that too, for change, growth, or whatever it is that will set you on the course to living your best life. You can choose to let it consume you, or you can choose to view your experience as temporary. It's really all about perspective. Tip number 5, add your experience to your personal narrative, but don't let it define you. This is key. While my scars are a permanent accessory, I've chosen to use them as a tool to teach. They represent a snapshot of my 30-something years on this earth, so I'm purposeful about how I address them. I don't like for people to judge my entire existence based on that one chapter of my life, and I'm sure you can relate. So yes, it's okay to incorporate your trauma into your life. It's okay to talk about it, but own your narrative and share it as you see fit. Don't let anyone else define you based on your experiences. Number 6, get in touch with your spirituality, or whatever you believe in. Your higher power, universe, higher self, creator, God. When nothing else makes sense, sometimes you have to rely on knowing that there's something greater meant for your life. And that can help sometimes to bring you out of a funk. Number 7, be proactive about your healing process, but be patient with yourself. That was hard for me. I tried to do both. Considering I'd never spent a night in the hospital before in all of my 23 years in life before being attacked, and then end up staying in the hospital for 6.5 weeks, I became extremely frustrated with how much my life had changed. I felt helpless, weak, and stuck, and many days I was disappointed in myself. So at around 7 a.m., like twice a week, my PT, physical therapist, would come to my bedside so that she could help me practice walking again. And man, I was a terrible patient. It was really hard. She came really early, and so I took out a lot of my anger on her. But when I was working on learning how to walk again, I remembered all the things that I couldn't do and how frustrating it was. And I was really anxious to get back to doing those things. So that's what really, really motivated me to work my butt off, and really be proactive in my healing process so that I could get back to where I was before my burns. Tip number 8, set clear goals and expect to meet them. It'll give you something to focus on and something to look forward to. It allows you to look forward to the future and temporarily escape your present, as well as imagine a future you'd like for yourself. This was very helpful for me. When I was healing, I set goals for myself to go back to school, to run a marathon, just things that I could focus on to help get me to the next space. Tip number 9, forgive yourself. Forgiving others isn't a necessity, but forgiving yourself is. I chose to forgive the people who hurt me because thinking about them all the time had me in a mental prison. I had to set myself free from them. So I forgave them, but I also forgave myself for the choices I made, for the guilt that I carried. That in itself was incredibly freeing. I began to think less about how it would feel to get an apology and more about building a life of love, integrity, and happiness. I also let go. I let go of who I used to be and began embracing who I am. That meant letting go of the life I'd imagined and creating something new. And that's incredibly difficult. My last and final tip for you all is to learn to be okay with adversity and change. Because, man, life is going to happen. And it's going to happen fast. And there's no way for us to avoid hurt, disappointment, and sadness. It's just impossible. And so I had to learn to be okay with that, to know that those things were going to come. But more importantly, I had to learn some healthy coping mechanisms for dealing with the realities of loss, unexpected change, and sadness. When something bad happens, we often think, why me? Right? Has that ever happened? And you're like, why me? But there isn't always an answer. It's really up to us to make meaning out of our experiences. And once I accepted the fact that bad things happen to good people every day, and I just happened to be one of those people, my whole attitude shifted. I did not deserve what happened to me, nor did I provoke it, but I know that I can't change it. And today, even if it were an option, I wouldn't change a thing. I'm here with you today because I represent hope and possibility. When I was in survival mode, I couldn't see the beauty in my life. It was only after I pushed past that wall that I began to see beauty in myself and my surroundings. Sometimes I cannot believe how far I've come, but I'm proud of my journey, and I hope this helps someone. I hope it helps you. Thank you.